for a new player, the way that we've been taught to do it forever is that we go pick up a level 1 mission and you go do level 1s, and then eventually you'll get your corporation standings to do level 2s, and then you gotta log out and you gotta log back in because you can't talk to the next agent even if your standing is there unless you relog. It's some weird thing when the system change. I don't know. But you gotta log out, log back in, and you go to a level 2 agent and you do level 2s. And then once your corporation standing gets to 3, you can do level 3s. And then you log out and you log back in. And then you go do level 3s. And then you run level 3s until your corporation standing is to 5. Once your corporation is to 5, you log back out again, you log back in, and then you can do level 4s for that corporation. Now, if you were to grind and continue grinding, and you start grinding level 4s, you can grind level 4s and get storyline missions. Every 16 missions you do, you get a storyline mission. You need to get about 6 or 7 storyline missions in order to get your faction standings above 5. Once your faction standings are above 5, that's when your grind for fully unlocking level 4s is done. Unlocking the faction standing or getting your faction standings to 5 will allow you to do missions for the entirety of that faction. So if I go run for the Federation Police in Galente space and I run for them long enough and I continue doing the storyline missions, I can get my faction standings above 5 for Galente. And once my faction standings for Galente is above 5, I can do missions for any agent in Galente space. The other way to do this is, in my opinion, the easy way. You go and Google data center missions, and there is a Eve Uni page that describes them very well. I also have a YouTube video on this. I can't believe I had to make it, but anyways, you go Google data center missions, and the Eve Uni page comes up. There's a list of tags that you buy. For Galente, you buy Serpentis tags. For Mimitar, you buy Angel tags. For Amar, you buy Blood Raiders and Sancha tags, and for Caldari, you buy Garista tags. And then you go to these data center missions and you talk to them, or the data center agents. They're all in one spot. There's like 10 of them in one spot. You do the level 1 ones, you do the level 2 ones, you do the level 3 ones, you do the level 4 ones, and then your faction standings will be above 5. It takes roughly about an hour and a half versus the 40 plus hour grind of doing it the old fashioned way, or the way that was initially in the game. Yeah, I just that's the two ways of doing it, and there's I know the second way is compact with information, but it's I can't really explain it too much longer.
Yeah, I know, no volume from me.
There's not much more to add to it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Basically, go do the data center missions, and you get your standings. The big kicker is that when you train your social skills up, there's they don't really seem to be useful to a pilot until you think about how much they help missions. And that's all the social skills do. You want to train social to 5 to maximize the gain in standings for every mission you turn in. And then diplomacy and connections helps the standings afterwards. It's a retroactive effect. So if you train those later, that's okay. But you want to train social 5 quickly if you want to do missions. It helps a lot.
Right. So let's talk. Let's actually talk about this for a quick second because I think this is important. Skills. So we have our method, right, which is obviously grinding faction standings. But let's talk about skills for a quick second because this actually does directly equal our total potential ISK per hour at least. So
they have a huge impact on ISK per hour.
So what are the skills that a new player trying to get in? Again, this entire cast assumes an Omega account, obviously, because we're doing force. What are the skills that a person would need to get fully set up, say, while they're running these faction missions to get themselves up to the correct standings? What are the skills that a person, I mean, of course, aside from the ship skills, what are the skills that a person would be wanting to train here to maximize their ISK per hour?
Okay, so one thing that we got to talk about is standings, and I know this is It's not what you want to hear. You need to train social up so that every time you turn in a mission, you get more standings increase. You also need to train connections. This will give you your faction standings will stay above 5 a lot easier with connections trained up. And the last one that affects standings that you need to train is diplomacy. An agent will continue to talk to you as long as his or her standing is above -2 and the faction or corporation standing is above 5. So connections keeps the faction standings above 5, diplomacy keeps the agent standing above -2 when you're declining missions. The other one that's incredibly important, this is for like payout and directly impacts your ISK and hour. The negotiation skill increases the ISK payout by 5% for every skill level. So training that to 5 gives you an additional 25% pay of raw ISK when you turn in a mission. And then the bigger impact is actually security connections. And this will give you a 10% increase in loyalty point payout per level, which means a 50% increase in payout. So a mission that normally gives you 9,000 loyalty points is now giving you 14,000 loyalty points. It's a big difference. And then if you're in nullsec, criminal connections is incredibly important. It has a similar effect and increases the effective standings with criminal factions.
So this is something that I wanted to talk about. Okay, I'm suddenly really loud. This is something I did want to talk about, which was LP. Let's talk about LP for a quick second, because I think this is actually really important. What factions are good in general? Oh my god, I am loud.
So that does change based on how faction warfare and how the market is. Recently, they've been tanking because the Glamour X boosters have allowed people to farm higher level missions very effectively. But you want to go to Fuzzworks and figure out what faction you do. I do SOE or Sisters of Eve because they the LP doesn't change much. It fluctuates between 13 and 1800 ISK per LP. The highest I've ever seen is 1800 ISK when I first started, and as I've been doing them, they've slowly gone down. Right now, they're about 1300, 12 to 1300. They're the lowest I've ever seen them right now. But most factions, a dumpable LP, something that you can dump 4 or 5 million LP into, you get 800 to 900 ISK per LP. There's a couple of hidden ones. I haven't gone through, gone onto Fuzzworks and gone and checked every single corporation and figured out what every single corporation's dumpable LP is. I do know that there's a couple that are better than SOE, and I have purposefully not gone and figured it out because I don't want to ruin that for the people that are doing it.
Right. So it seems that LP dumping is a thing.
Yes, and it's very easy to crash a market if you screw up.
Right. I mean, so we have seen that with Concord LP.
Yeah. So the market's competitive, and when you convert LP, you end up with a lot of stuff that you need to sell in the market. And people think, let's sell this as quick as possible, and it kind of ruins things.
Yeah, it is one of the main topics that I've spoken about a lot when it comes to making ISK is this sense of people not knowing exactly how fast items move, and things in Eve move a lot slower than people would like to imagine. So
Yeah, we'll do this in units of time. So I can run missions on one account, excuse me, and make about 500k to 600k LP a day on one account. Over a week, that's roughly 2 or 3 million LP. Now, 2 or 3 million LP, if I were to buy that all into one item, depending on the item, and dump it on the market immediately, it would hurt the LP market. But if I were to go save up for a month and try and dump all that at once into the market, it's going to tank it.
yeah, because there's only so many that you're gonna be. There's like only so much LP that's getting moved per day,
Yeah.
or so many items
People
that are
need to
being
buy
bought.
the goods that you're trying to sell, and it takes time.
So let's talk about the specific factions, though, real quick, because we all know about SOE, we all know about the Nestor, we all know about the Stratios, the Astero, the scanning probe launcher. But what about the Navy fleets? You know, Republic Fleet, Caldari Navy, Galente Federation Navy.
So all the magnetic field stabilizers, the heat sinks, the launchers, all the faction launchers come out of loyalty points, and so that's why they're so expensive, and you also need to get tags for them. So generally, when you do a faction, like Federation Navy, Imperial Navy, or Coldari State, you end up converting in your stuff either into ammo or gun stuff because that's what's consumed. Although you can make implants, you can make the ship blueprints and stuff like that. It depends on what you want to make or what the value of the LP is.
Right. So we have, I mean, of course, naturally the four navies. We have SOE. Are there ones that people kind of dismiss? LP stores that people dismiss? Well, I know we have the DED one that's just starting to develop, but are there one in Concord, of course? But are there ones that people kind of throw under the bus simply because they're not major faction or they're not that well known?
Not for level 4 security missions, no.
So
Uh,
everything is kind of known. All the groups are kind of really well known.
yeah, yeah, they're
Okay.
they're 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 pretty much what they are. One kind of uncommon one that I would like to see become more common is the Thucker tribe that makes the Thucker cat batteries.
Now, so these are pirate missions, right?
No, level 4 security mission. Thucker is a Mimitar corporation.
Okay, so it's Minmatar. Okay.
Yeah,
Now, so what is special about Thucker? I mean, we all know the shield extenders and
the cat
how
batteries.
crazy.
The cat batteries are really useful in invasions in the abyss because they have a low power grid and CPU requirement compared to Republic fleet with comparable stats. They're more expensive, so you do make a good chunk of ISK per LP on them, but not many people are running them. So because SOE is right next door to Docker, and people just run SOE.
Right. Okay. So we've talked about getting set up. We've talked about who to run. Let's start getting into the nitty gritty here. So let's start with level 4 missions, just plain level 4s, and let's talk about exactly. Let's talk about fits in the beginning, because how to run the sites are going to be heavily dependent on your fit. So, what I mean, everybody knows about the missioning material, right?
Yeah, that's the most common ship or the most highly recommended ship. Really, if you want to do level 4 missions, any battleship will work. I've flown almost every single battleship into a level 4 mission, and they've all been successful, including a Scorpion. Although the Scorpion
Okay,
was incredibly painful.
okay, that's interesting.
So you basically hop into a battleship, get some reppers on it, get some tank on it, bring as much DPS as you can, and have fun.
So
Like
yeah,
that's
so
basic.
that is what I do want to talk about. So let's sit here and look at this. So there, while fun per hour is important, let it. We are here to make ISK, and you can choose whatever play style you want
So
depending on your skills.
I do have numbers for you for doing these in different ways.
Right. So but let's just give a general for those who maybe want to be who want to be a little bit more explorative in their um, adventures into level 4s. What would be a DPS level that you would say is mandatory to complete these in a non eye gouging amount of time?
Um, you really need to be able to effectively break the passive tank on the battleships. So you want at least like 600 DPS on a if you're flying a battleship, and 500 is doable on a cruiser. But the more the better because you every NPC doesn't get remote reps, but they all have a chance to repair every so many seconds. The mechanic is every tick they have a chance to repair, and sometimes they repair a lot, sometimes they repair a little. But if you can kill them before they have too many chances to repair, you're going to kill them a lot faster. So if you're doing like 500 DPS, it's going to take you 2 minutes to kill a battleship. If you're doing 700 DPS, it's going to take you 30 seconds to kill the battleship. It's weird how that works, but yeah.
All right. So let's then talk about the most optimal ship. What would be the most optimal ship to run these level 4 missions in? Is it the Macarial, or is it something that a lot of people kind of tend to look over because there are some sleepers. Um, no pun
The
intended.
most looked over ship for level 4 missions is Barcast.
Bargast.
They're really Barghest, the big old fat paddle.
Yeah, everybody knows about the manta ray. Yeah.
It is incredibly efficient because you don't have to be anywhere near the NPCs, and you can literally just fit for all DPS a micro warp drive and a micro jump drive with like a small shield booster, and that'll give you enough tank to survive. And they're pretty fast too. So, and then they also have 2 utility highs, so you can scoop loot if you want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, so it just kind of one of those lesser ones. I always recommend the Barcast or the Macarial, depending on if you have missiles or gun skills. If you have gun skills, I always recommend the Mac. If you have missile skills, I recommend the Barcast. And they trade blows with each other as to which one is actually more efficient. For full clearing, the Barcast tends to be a little bit faster, but for blitzing, the Macarial definitely outshines the Barcast because of its warp speed.
Now, what about the Rattlesnake? Because we all know the extensive power of drones, especially in the current meta.
I hate that thing so much. So people love the Rattlesnake because you can put a passive tank on it. You can not worry about it. It's really easy to fly. The problem with it, or the issue that I have with the Rattlesnake for mission running, is that it's really easy to get into and it's really easy to look good immediately. The problem with it is you have to train both the drone and missile skills for it to be exceptional. And even once you've trained those, the thing is fat and slow.
Yeah.
People greatly underestimate mobility in missions. There's a lot of missions where you have to fly a good distance or travel a good distance, and with max skills, a Rattlesnake with a micro warp drive goes like 800 meters a second. They're painfully slow.
Yeah, that is definitely something. Okay, so do the level 4. Let's talk about level 4 missions in detail a little bit here because we have plenty of time. We're only a half hour in. Do the missions change from corp to corp, or are they all generally the same thing?
They're all the same. There's a few variants. So when you go from one side of New Eden to the other, you get different variants. A really good example of this, there's a mission called the Pirate Invasion, and depending on what region you're in, the Pirate Invasion will be done by a different pirate faction, and it affects the mission a little bit, but the mission itself is the same mission. The blitz is the same.
It really just
They're
affects the damage types,
yeah.
which is something to take
Um,
into account depending on what kind of ship you are going to be flying, especially if you're
yeah.
looking for optimal.
Yeah. So, and then different agents give us from a slightly different pool of missions, and it varies a little bit, but for the most part, missions are generally
Okay. So, what else is there to cover for level 4 missions? We've covered fits, the missions. So let's talk about these specific missions then. What are the missions that you can pick up from level 4s, and let's go over each one because there seems to be a pattern or a way of doing them that's important here, especially for cutting down time.
hold up. I'm bringing up my tool here.
Yeah, so just a quick note, everybody, we will have show notes. So everything that we're talking about here, everything that we're speaking about, we have show notes that you guys are going to be able to go into and pick up all the links for, so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about here. So let me get a link for that while Hateless is doing his thing. And I suppose, yeah, so while we're on the subject, what about the fits? What are the fits for these ships? What are we looking at? Active tank, passive tank, armor.
So,
Let's
a
start with
general
the
rule of
Macarial. What is the fit for the Macarial?
we roll autocannons with it. I put a tractor beam on it because the tractor beam helps get loot a little bit more efficiently. It can shave up to 30 seconds off of mission. And then we have a micro warp drive and a micro jump drive on the one that I'm currently running because there's one mission that the micro jump drive is more effective with. And rather than refitting it every time I get that mission, I just leave it on the ship. It saves time. And then a micro warp drive because there's some missions where you need to navigate from A to B. and then a Gisty X-type shield booster, and then I do two adaptive invulns and a tracking computer. And then in the lows, I have 3 gyro stabilizers and 3 tracking enhancers, all a Republic fleet. And then the rigs are all hyperspatials.
Okay.
The thing only does like 5 missions. It can do any mission. It's a little painful to do some of the missions with more DPS because it really doesn't have much tank on it. It's literally a DPS tank. The whole idea behind it is that it deals more damage, so it kills the things faster than they can kill you.
Okay. So let's talk about the Bargus then. I assume rapid heavies.
That is a highly argued point for level 4s. There's some missions where rapid heavies outperform the cruise missiles, but as soon as a mission takes longer than 2.5 minutes or so, then the rapid heavies kind of fall to the wayside. You can get really good application with cruise on a barcast. So I tend to fit my barcast with cruise missiles, and then I do 2 missile guidance enhancers in the lows, and then 2 missile guidance computers, both scripted for precision in the mids. And then that leaves me still like 4 or 5 slots for tank and a prop mod, and then damage mods in the low. You can fit some stupid DPS on. You really don't need much tank for missions if you can clear the rats fast. But I did find that when I was limited on DPS, they made me fly a Scorpion once. Scorpion's painful because it has no bonuses that are applicable to missions, so just a bare ship with 4 hard points. I found that I needed quite a bit of tank on that to survive the missions, but it did it. It took 45 minutes to do the blockade, but that's not too bad.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. So I mean, I get the Rattlesnake sounds pretty basic. Triple drone, triple DDA with full passive accompaniment, and maybe rapid heavies on the top to add DPS to just boost
I
yourself a bit. But
I highly prefer active tanks for missions than
so
passive tanks because passive
okay.
tanks take so many slots away from DPS. And I keep going back to DPS. You want more DPS to clear the missions faster. You're not going to make a lot of ISK if it takes you an hour to do a mission.
But so with the Rattlesnake in particular, is active tank advantageous for DPS because most of it is coming from the drones? Or is there
Oh,
something
yes.
so like navigation computers and ballistic control systems?
Omnidirectional tracking links exist,
Yeah,
and so do missile guidance computers. Those go in the mids and help DPS a lot.
right.
I
So
mean, the fits for level 4s are extremely flexible. The DPS incoming in the cap or in the E war is very minimal, especially compared to what we're dealing with now, like invasions, where things get complex really quick. Missions are fairly simple.
yeah, and I think that's something that is something that is important for new people because they are going into these invasions. They are being thrown into, wormhole space where, we have heavy newt pressure. Um, and to have that removed is kind of an odd thing. So the fitting practices and styles kind of they really do change, and for some people, for especially for newer players, it can be relatively difficult to understand what that is. So that is important, I guess, to mention that its active tanks are not punished as heavily in missions as they are in
Exactly.
invasions or in wormhole space or where have you. Now the one question I do have pertaining to that is Blood Raiders. If you are running Blood Raider missions,
Blood Raiders tend to newt. They only newt within 20 kilometers though. So you can, if you know what NPCs newt, you can just kill them.
right?
So
Okay.
I mean, they're not as scary as people think they are, but to somebody who's inexperienced, they can be pretty scary.
Well, nuke pressure is very terrifying anytime when they get under you. I mean, when they get within range, and if you haven't dealt with them fast enough, I mean, it can be a scary situation depending on where you are in your cap, depending on how cap stable you are.
Yeah.
So, I think is there anything else that we need to cover with level 4 missions? Is there anything that you want to?
So if this is madness, you guys really want to know the numbers. A new player kind of crunching away at level 4 missions can expect to earn somewhere between 30 to 40 million ISK an hour. Once he's skilled in flying a proper ship, you can expect as much as 50 to 60 million ISK an hour flying a Mac, just hammering at missions, not blitzing or anything. Once you figure out the blitzing and get blitzing down, you can easily earn 100 plus million ISK an hour just blitzing missions, not doing burners, just hammering them out in like a Mac or a Barcast. Really wouldn't recommend a Rattlesnake because instead of Rattlesnake, you can fly the Barcast with less skills. Just saying. Um, it just, yeah, that's where the numbers are for level 4 mission running without burners. Burners add a whole nother dynamic to the thing, and I think we're going to touch on that a little later.
We are. So we're gonna move on to it right after this, but let's touch on the different missions, the different scenarios that you can run into when running just standard level fours, and maybe how to approach each one. So how many? I guess this is a very dangerous question to ask, but how many different types of missions are there in level fours? Is there, is it a handful? Is it 24? Are we gonna be here for the next week? Um,
Each mission is unique, and I think each agent has a pool of 30 or so missions that they can give you.
okay.
So
Are
there's a
there
website.
archetypes? Is the question. Are there archetypes of missions?
If you have a mission with a name, it's going to be that mission. There's going to be no deviation.
Okay. So then it comes to either studying or remembering the mission types.
Yes.
Okay.
So there's a website called Eve Survival, and it has logged every single mission in the game because they've been around for so long and haven't changed. It's also logged a lot of other things for other ISK making endeavors, but Eve Survival is a fantastic source for learning missions. If you don't know the mission that you're going into, I highly recommend that you go Google Eve Survival and look up that mission, and it gives you a pretty detailed like, this is how I do the mission. This is the safe way to do it. This is the stupid way to do it. This is the way to blitz it.
To the show notes, so those will be there.
Yeah, I'll provide you a link. There's an
Already done. So if you
okay.
guys are actually looking at the show notes, they are going to be there. So, and again, the show notes will be at the end of the show as well.
This page got broken.
Okay, so
Wow.
trying to talk about each individual one. I mean, if there's a pool of 30 and there's tons of different missions, I mean, yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
kind of
for the most part, you got to learn how to identify groups. All the rats in the missions are kind of grouped together, and they aggress you in groups. So you don't get aggressed by the entire room at once, where almost every other anomaly and thing, as soon as you go in, the entire room aggresses you. These guys, if you shoot a specific NPC, only that group will engage you. You can engage one group at a time. You can kind of chew through it.
okay. So all right. So I guess moving on, let's sit and let's talk about burners. What are burners?
Okay. Burners are I'll give you the lore first. Burners are agents that have decided that they do not like their faction anymore and have decided to turn tail and do their own thing. They are your agent notifies you where they are, and you go kill them. Their reward is very high. The worst burner to do pays with assuming 13,000 ISK per LP. The worst burner to do will give you 25 to 30 million ISK, and it takes about 3 or 4 minutes to kill and about 2 minutes to travel to the station to and from the mission. So they can be done
Wow.
very quickly and make a crazy amount of ISK if you can chain them together.
Okay, let's get really into this. So I assume lore wise, these are just people who've gone rogue, basically.
Yeah, so if you get the burner that is associated with Galente Federation, you go kill it. You don't lose standings with Galente. One big part of mission running that I forgot to mention earlier, I probably should have, and it's going to be kind of hidden in this little bit. But if you don't shoot a rat that belongs to a faction, so if you get a mission that's against Galente and you don't do that mission, you'll never lose standings with Galente, even if you run Caldari missions all day.
Wow. So
You
that
can
is,
maintain your
yeah.
standings with other factions by not shooting other NPC rats, and burners are exempt from this.
Okay. So I assume lore-wise, are these capsuleers or are these just people who have gone rogue?
I believe they're just rogue pilots. They do say something. Hold on, let me pull one and read the description.
Because there are storylines in missions that do involve effectively capsuleers that aren't pilots, that are NPC
They
capsuleers.
could
These
be
do exist.
capsuleers. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they are capsuleers or not, but they do say that they have
I can hear
the equivalent
Ashtarothi just writhing in his
attack
seat
of.
right now.
I know. That's gold.
Waiting for the Discord ping now.
Sorry, I'm launching my account. This is the mission hub, and I'll pull a mission here, and I'll read the description and clarify this. But they're either equivalent to a capsuleer or they are capsuleers. I can't remember, but they're very dangerous. An individual burner, uh, for what they are, they cheat. So you can think of them as officer fitted of whatever it is. So if
Wow.
you're
Okay.
versing the Sancha burner, that's effectively an officer fit succubus that you have to go fight. Yeah, they're
So
they're scary.
so let's get into these. Who can offer burners, or is that just something that comes from all level
Any
4
level
agents?
4 agent that is the security agent can give you a level 4 mission or a burner mission.
Now, the
So
burner
they're
is
available
a
all over.
burner is a shortened term. I believe the actual is anomic.
Yep, they're anomic missions. So any mission that starts with the word anomic, except for there's one exception to this. There's like a anomic assembly or something. I can't remember what it is.
But
Any mission that starts with the word anomic and says that you can decline it freely is a burner mission.
okay. So for those of you who have skipped those, okay. So yeah, so I guess we've talked about who you run for, SOE, the navies. So let's talk about these specific burners then. Let's go. How many are there?
There are 13 unique burners. Each one has certain traits that it is good at and bad at, and certain ways that it will kill you, and certain ways that you can survive it. The easiest group to kind of explain is the Anomic teams. They are the ones associated with the Empire factions. We have a burner Hawk, a burner Enyo, a burner Jaguar, and a burner Retribution. Uh,
Okay.
these all these sites have one thing in common. They all spawn. The NPC spawns about 50 kilometers off of you and flies directly at you upon entering the room. So they're kiteable. That makes
It
them
seems
very.
relatively easily kiteable.
Yes. So you hop in a Garmer because the Garmer is the second fastest ship in the game, and you can shoot them down with rockets pretty simply. They're the easiest ones to learn by far, and that gets you doing 4 of the 13 with only one ship. The problem is that the Garmer's like 500 million ISK that I like to run. I have 130 million ISK fit that works, but it literally takes twice as long. I think that extra 400 million ISK is worth doing these twice as fast.
Twice as long in comparison to 3 minutes.
So
We're
we're
looking at
talking
maybe
like
10 minutes.
5 minute,
At,
5 to 6 minute kills versus 2.5 minute kills.
ooh.
And when you think about that, and you're running these in terms, you're trying to pull as many as you can, do as many as you can. If you can shave 30 seconds off, that's an additional 3 or 4 million ISK you're going to make that hour,
Yeah.
and that's
So
just
let's
30
actually
seconds.
talk about that for a second. Let's talk about before we go deep into each individual burner, because we can actually spend a good amount of time on this. What kind of rewards are we looking at? Because it doesn't sound, from what I understand, it's not a huge ISK reward. It seems like it's more leaning towards the LP. Is that right?
Uh, To a degree. I'd say it's about a 60-40 split. About
Okay.
60% of the value of doing these is from loyalty points. In nullsec, that changes a little bit because you get a lot more loyalty points when you do these. But I get about 14,000, or I get 14,201 LP for doing these in a 0.5 security system, and I get somewhere between 4.5 and 6 million ISK for each individual burner. And on average, they take about 5 to 6 minutes to do.
Okay. And so, roughly, how much do you make per hour running these? If assuming that the market is at a medium, it's not like it's not like heavily in demand. It's not being
So
overrun. Just assuming an average.
right now, with the LP being about 13.5, 1400, I can make about 250 million ISK an hour on one character.
One character.
One character can make 250 million ISK an hour. Yes. That is going to change a little bit. It's going to drop by about 15 to 20 million ISK an hour when the Glamour X boosters expire.
Right.
But that's not a big change. It's just going to mean that it's 230 million ISK an hour instead of 250.
So it
And
seems like the
that's
Glamour X booster
consistent.
does. Go ahead. Sorry.
I can reproduce that and do that consistently. That's a consistent income. On top of that, there's also the chance of faction drops, which do happen. Every single burner has a chance to drop any module that belongs to that faction.
So these are faction guys.
Yeah, they're all faction spots. Every single one of them gives you uh, uh, a chance of faction. I believe it's like 2 or 3%, but I did burner Talos once and pulled 800 million ISK out of that mission just by doing.
So there's a chance if you do.
There's a chance of a jackpot. Yes, jackpots do exist.
So this is okay. So this is like the best of both worlds. This is the best of
Yep.
this is the best of running missions, and this is also like kind of like the best of DEDs, because with DEDs you get the faction
Kind of.
spawns.
It's pretty rare, but it does happen. And I do not. The 250 million ISK an hour is not including the faction drops.
No, but we can't discount that as being a possibility because
Yes.
all of a sudden, boom, you get
I've actually done extremely extensive testing on this. So I found. So I earned 100 billion ISK doing missions 6 months ago.
Okay.
Over the course of 2 months because I do them on 3 accounts. So I was able to do a lot of this very quickly. In the time that I earned 100, 120 billion ISK because I lost a lot of ships and had to pay for things, I made about 10 billion ISK in loot as well that I didn't include in that. So I'd say roughly 10% extra income on top of what you earn for loot.
And this is sporadic, of course.
Yeah, it's extremely sporadic, but I feel like with that kind of sample size of 4,000 missions, that's pretty accurate.
So let's dig into a little bit of the faction spawns real quick. These are frigates, so I assume that there is a small pool of very specific things that they can drop, or is it like a nightmare blueprint off of the Sancha? Is there a Sancha burner?
They're very specific. So when you kill Sancha, he can drop. I think Sancha is associated with Senti. He can drop any Senchi. No, it can't drop Senchi. It can drop Sancha modules, which are I can't remember what they're called. I don't get
True
them very often.
Sancha.
Sancha doesn't drop. Sancha doesn't drop very often. We'll use the burner Garissa has a chance to drop a Dread Garissa shield adaptive invuln or Dread Garissa drone damage control. It can drop these things. The burner Enyo can drop Federation Navy magnetic field stabilizers. It can drop guns. It can drop anything that would fit on that ship. So
Well,
in
so
the
the
cruiser sites,
True Sancha is Sancha's thing. So like True
yeah.
Sancha
So you get a
capacitor
true
flux.
Sancha small armor rep or
Yeah.
a capacitor or a remote cap transfer.
Okay. Wow. So that's interesting. So let's dig into these burners. Let's dig into each mission. So, well, I guess you said the team Anomics are the easiest ones to start with. So
The teams are very simple. I recommend a Garmer for them. You can do them relatively quickly in a Garmer. I have guides for all these, so I'm just gonna kind of brush on them and kind of tell you how you fight each one. I'm gonna just do a basic
so
overview. I'm not gonna go into
before we jump directly into how to fight them, let's talk about the fit for the Garmer real quick. Now this is going to be on the show notes, guys. There's going to be a link to Hateless's I believe what is it called? Workbench. There's going to be a workbench in there.
Yeah.
If you go through and you just hit Control F if you're on Chrome, and
search
search
Anomic
Anomic.
on my workbench.
Yeah.
Those are the fits for these missions.
Yeah. So let's go over the the Garmer real quick for the teams. So what are we looking at? What's this fit? And let's not be shy about fitting here. Let's go straight for like the 500 mil one.
Okay, I was gonna quickly give you guys a cheap one and then the expensive one.
No, let's just go straight for the expensive one because this is about making ISK. This isn't about,
straight for the proper blitz. Okay, so I generally buy 10 of these because I lose them all the time. So I'll buy 10 and ship all the shit from Jita. So first off, we're using polarized rocket launchers. This means no resist. As soon as one of these things tackles you or hits you, you're dead. So it's very easy to lose this ship, but it's incredibly lucrative to fly. This is the single most profitable ship that I've ever flown in EVE Online. It's a polarized rocket launchers in the highs. In the mid slots, we have 2 missile guidance computer 2s. If you have CPU issues, you can downgrade that to meta, but you're going to have difficulties elsewhere. So I'd recommend training the skills. We go cheap on the micro warp drive. We go with a 5mm YT8. We actually did a lot of experimenting as to which cheap micro warp drive to fit because it can fit the others. This one has a lower signature radius, which makes Jaguar less likely to hit you, which is very important. And then we have a peripheral compact target painter. If you have CPU, you can't upgrade that. It doesn't fit. And then in the lows, we have Republic Fleet ballistics controls ×3. This is the expensive part of the Garmer. So you have 3 extra Republic Fleet ballistics controls. And then in the rigs, we have a small hydraulic bay thruster 2. We have a fuel cache partition 2 and a flare catalyst. These help with damage application and range. The big important number that you have to hit is 230 plus DPS with faction ammo. Any more is better. DPS above that is exponentially more rewarding. I did a test once comparing 260 to 265 DPS with the only skill change was it's something that gave me 2% more DPS, and I got 5 extra DPS, and I did the same thing on both characters with the only change being 5 DPS, and the time difference was an entire minute for doing Burner Jaguar. So the DPS is exponentially more rewarding as you go above 230. That's why we spend so much on the DPS. The other number that you want to hit is 20 kilometers with rage rockets using a missile precision script and a missile optimum script. You want one of each. And that allows you to use rage rockets against Enyo and Hawk. And then the other number that you want to reach is you want to have 30 or 27 kilometers with faction rockets with the same layout in your scripts so that you can hit Burner Jaguar when you're orbiting them at 26. The Javelin rockets are used for Jaguar's Logi. And then, yeah, those are the numbers that you want to hit. Range is critical.
Now, this doesn't include the pod head.
Pod can be empty.
Pod can be empty, but let's say, yes. But you said that DPS is exponential. So,
I currently the only thing that I use that helps the Garmer is I have a capacitor implant and I have a rate of fire 5% for missiles. I do a rate of fire and gun rate of fire in my pod to help to give assistance to every single ship that I fly.
Okay.
If you're doing these in nullsec, you would obviously have a specialized pod that makes these truly mental. But I'm not going to get into the nullsec fits. That's
we're not
going to different story.
We're not going to specifically cover nullsec level 4 burners. If there are
they're a different ball game, and I would recommend interviewing somebody else about nullsec burners.
Yeah. So if there are people who know, go if you guys want to share information in chat, by all means. So let's talk about these specific burners and how to run them, the specific ones. So teams, because obviously teams are the simplest.
So the teams are the Garmer that we just talked about. Like I said, we're very specific about how we fit it and getting the range numbers and the DPS numbers. For 3 of them, everything but Jaguar, so Enyo, Hawk, and Retribution, you orbit at 20. For Hawk, you just fire Milner Rage, and it dies. That's it. That's all. You just shoot him with Milner Rage. For Enyo, Milner Nova. You shoot it and it dies. or sorry, not Milner Nova, Nova Rage. So the Rage ammo. Sorry, I get these mixed up all the time. And then for burner Retribution, or the Retribution, you got to kill both of the Logis with Nova ammo, with Navy Nova, and then you kill the Retribution itself with the thermal damage. Can somebody remind me what the thermal damage's name is? Anyways, the thermal damage rockets for Navy
Inferno?
rockets. Yes, Inferno Navy is what you want to use. And then for Burner Jaguar is the one that can and will kill you if you're not paying attention. You want to orbit Jaguar at 25 to 27 kilometers, depending on your skills and range. If you don't have the range, you need to orbit him a little closer. But I orbit him at 26, and then I kill his Logi with Milner Javelin, and then I kill him with Navy Scourge, which is the kinetic damage, as that is his EM or his resistance hull. They all scram, buddy.
They all scram. Okay.
Yep. Every single burner tackles you on grid. You can get stuck in them.
So the point,
they all tackle.
But that's why you want to get that. That's why you want to kite them, because if you don't, then that is a one-way ticket to the bank. Basically.
Yes. If they get close to you, they will web and scram you and shut you down. As soon as your micro warp drive is done, you're dead. Okay. I've only been webbed by a Enyo once and survived. And I've lost too many of them just from forgetting to turn on my micro warp drive.
This is a question, just because we've seen proliferation of this just a little bit because of the winter event, and the events have followed. Have you tested pirate ammo at all? Or I should say, yeah, pirate ammo, which I believe has some slightly different stats in comparison to Navy.
So if you're comparing like Dreadgrista to Navy, Dreadgrista doesn't make as much DPS, but it has better application. You want as much DPS as you can get, as well as application, and faction ammo is also in plentiful supply, so it's fairly cheap to buy. I mean, my ammo overhead is negligible.
Right. I was just thinking about that, because that is a lot of people just immediately point to Navy, but they don't take faction into like pirate.
We did consider it. Okay. I tried Dreadgrista. I tried a few different things. I've loaded up different ammos, and I find that just the plain Navy works.
Okay. So let's continue on with talking about these burners. That was all the team? Is that right? Were those the team ones?
Okay. All the teams are done with the Gummer. That's the simplest one. They're the easiest to do.
So what's the next tier up then?
It'd be the agent classification. So okay. The teams and the agents only allow you to bring in a frigate. So you can bring in any frigate you like, T1, T2. You can't bring in a rookie frigate, obviously, but you can bring in Tier 1, Tier 2 frigates, pirate frigates, whatever you want. I'll just start going down them in order. We'll start with Anomic Agent Blood Raider. He is a Crore, and he does what you'd expect a Crore to do. He comes in brawling range and tries to newt you out and webs you and scrams you. And this burner has been broken for a very long time. When they introduced the Satoyo, they changed the NPC and added a passive repair to it, which made me angry, but they did that. For a long time, it wasn't runnable because we couldn't figure out the fit. And then they announced the assault frigate change, where they gave all assault frigates an additional bonus of 25% cap. They just gave them all a flat rate of 25% cap, and they also changed the Jaguar. This allowed the Jaguar, the Harpy, and the Wolf to do Blood Raider's burner. I no longer fit those ships or use those ships because they are insanely expensive to fly them, and the Nurgle came out. So the Nurgle is now the ship to use for the Blood Raider agent. You basically approach it and shoot it, and the fit's completely cap stable. It has plus 16 cap, so that it can never nuke you out. You have just enough tank to survive, and it's all DPS after that. But you just basically point it, or you don't even point it, you web it and shoot it. Like, that's it. The next one that we'll cover, I guess we'll go with Guristas, as that's also done in an assault frigate. The Agent Gurista is a worm, as you can expect. They're the faction that they belong to. This one is a little unique. It starts at range from you, so it starts at like 30, 40 kilometers from you, but he scram kites you, and he does purely kinetic damage. So any ship that has a lot of kinetic tank can do this mission as long as it can catch up to it. The thing goes about 3 or 4 kilometers a second away from you. So no, it's 3.3 because a unheated Enyo can keep up with it. Anyways, we fit a micro warp drive Enyo to catch up to this thing. I have a passive shield fit and a active armor fit. The active armor fit can't die in this mission, but it can burn out its guns and get stuck in there. Or burn out the micro warp drive and get stuck. Basically, you activate the micro warp drive, you chase it down, you apply a scram to it, which shuts off its micro warp drive. Then you can turn your micro warp drive off and blast it. It also has active reps as well as its big passive buffer, so this one has a lot of VHP. You need to bring a lot of DPS to kill it. The Enyo that we fly brings about 400 DPS. Just people who run burners. There's a small community that's been built around my stream that does these in high sec. There's a couple. I'll mention their Eve names. There is Feldora, who has been helping me with fittings for a long time. There's also, who else is there? There's I'm a Wizard, who I initially learned from, and Chainsaw Plankton is the one that initially got people running burners. But as far as fits and publishing them and updating them and making them known, I'm really not trying to toot my own horn here, but I'm pretty much the forefront on it. Just me and a few other pilots optimizing fits. I mean, there's not much more optimization to do than there already has been done. And there's a couple little changes floating around. Like we found that the Nurgle can do almost everything, but the fits get kind of expensive. So, and the Daredevil outperforms it in certain situations because the Nurgle has to spool up to apply its DPS, and the Serpentis and the Blood Raiders have the most HP, so the Nurgle fits in those two really nicely. So the next one I suppose I'll cover is the Serpentis. The Serpentis is a Daredevil that runs a scram kite and a web with Daredevil webs, that painful 90% web, and he brings a crap ton of DPS as well. We found that the Harpy did this really effectively with a medium shield booster because it has a really high base kinetic and thermal resist, because that's kind of like what it's for. And that runs it fairly effectively. Right now I'm running a Nurgle with a dual web, and it happens to kill it a little bit faster than the Harpy and is roughly as safe. So I've been running the Nurgle. And it's basically the same thing. You web and shoot. We use Federation Navy webs because it hangs out at 12, and Federation Navy webs have the 14-kilometer range. So we use Fed Navy webs instead of regular webs, which makes the fit kind of expensive. And then the next one would be my personal favorite, Angel Burner. We used to use an active tanked armor Daredevil, and we've switched to a passive shield tanked Daredevil that has all DPS on it. So it kills it in roughly 30 seconds is the fight time. You keep at range 2 kilometers and web it down and kill it. And the Angel one is a Dremiel. So it's going to do what a Dremiel does. It wants to get close to you and orbit you really fast and have a high transversal. We bring a dual web Daredevil to stop it from doing that and control range and blow it out of the sky. Which ones have I covered? Let's see. Now I got... And then I believe Sanch is the last one. This should be the 5th one. Are you counting? I hope you're counting. The Sancha Burner behaves as you would expect a succubus to do. It wants to scram kite you with a faction scram that is, I believe, it's got to be an off. I don't know. It can scram you at 16 kilometers and web you at 16 kilometers. So we fit up a armor repping Daredevil that has its web. We do a Federation Navy web again because it's a 14-kilometer range. Overheated, that reaches out 18 kilometers. So we can heat up the web and close and control range, close the gap, and then again blast it out of the sky. And I believe, that's all the agents. So yeah, I covered everything for agents. That's the gist of the fights. They're pretty simple, and I do have, I'm sure he'll link them. I have a YouTube guide for each burner if you want specifics on how to do it, the fitting and all that.
So are there more? Are there more after this, or are those really all that? So it's the 4 factions, the 4 pirates, and that's it.
There's bases.
Okay.
So we've covered the Anomic teams and the Anomic agents.
4.
5 is 9.
Oh, 9. Yeah.
Four
Yeah. Yeah.
plus 5 is 9. So there's 13 burners. The other ones are bases. So these are a little bit different. I don't. I was away from Eve when these got announced, so I'm not sure on the timeline or the lore from the bases. But we have 4 bases. I only run 2 of them frequently. I can run all 5 of them. Only 2 are extremely profitable. The other 2 are either risky or take a really long time to do. We can go over all 4 of them fairly quickly. The Angel base is basically 4 burner, basically 4 times the Angel agent. So we get 4 burner Dremels that come in and web and scram you, which, yes, all 4 of them at the same time. They do roughly 800 DPS together, which is quite a bit. We bring in a Vigilant with a triple web. Let that sink in. A Vigilant with a triple web. That is a 99.9% web after stacking penalties. So we bring in this Vigilant, and it makes their orbit speed. So we wait for them. They happen to settle their orbit at 3.5 kilometers. And guess what a Vigilant's optimal range is with Void?
I assume it's 3.5 kilometers.
3250. So
Oh,
3,250
okay.
kilometers of Nestles.
Sorry for the
So we
clip.
web them right in our optimal and apply the full 800 DPS onto each one. The fit has literally enough buffer to kill the first 2 before they break your tank or before you run out of your buffer, and then it can hold against 2 indefinitely. Well, not indefinitely. It's got a 6-minute cap, but to hold against the once you kill the third, your armor stats going up. You're repped all the way, and then we bring a mobile depot and mobile tractor unit to scoop up the loot and or not to scoop up the loot, but to refit a cat battery to a micro warp drive. And then there's a 4th NPC in this mission called the transport, which is your objective to kill. You go chase that down and kill it. And this one pays. There's 22 million ISK bounties, and it has the same turn-in rewards as the others. So this one ends up being worth 42 to 45 million to do, and takes about 12 minutes, with all said and done.
So that doesn't sound as profitable as the others.
It's the only one that is less profitable, or that is more profitable than it is the Angel Burner.
Right.
Because you're not spending time in the station. You're doing something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a little bit longer in the mission with double the pay, but you only have to travel to it once. So it takes a little bit longer than an agent, but you only have to travel to it once. Whereas if you get 2 agents, you have to travel to both of them. Travel time is a killer. The next base is the other one that I like to run, and that is Burner Talos. This one's truly unique and teaches manual piloting skills. Each of these burners, because of the way they are, you have to learn a certain skill or mechanic in EVE Online to proficiently do them. Yes, it teaches you how to properly fly a ship and how to do things, because when you do make mistakes in these, you die, you lose your ship. So you have to learn how this mechanic works. I mean, my guides kind of tell you and show you how the mechanic works, but you still have to perform it. You still have to learn the mechanic, whether it's consciously or unconsciously. You're learning this mechanic, and then when you go on PvP and you see these ships, you're like, oh shit, okay, I know what I'm up against now. They actually teach you a PvP mechanic, and when they were introduced into the game, I believe it was to try and simulate PvP in a PvE environment, because they do behave very player like. Yeah, we could go more into that. But Burner Talos, you land in the middle of a grid of about 250 sentry turrets that are inactive, and they're in a grid. And then uh, to your 12 o'clock, there is a Telos. To roughly your 3 o'clock, there's another Telos. And to your 9 o'clock, there's a third Telos. So there's 3 Teloses in this mission. It is your objective to get to these Taluses without dying and to kill them. If you get within 10 kilometers of any of these sentry turrets, they activate. Each sentry turret does roughly 100 DPS in EM. You're tanked for kinetic thermal. So you don't want to be anywhere near these sentry turrets because... So first thing you have to do is you have to get out of this field. Second thing you have to do is you got to kill each of the Taluses that is on different sides of the field. So you kind of have to navigate your way around this by manual piloting, because if you just tell your ship to orbit one of these Taluses, you get low transversal with it and you die because these Taluses cheat. Each Talos carries about 1,000 DPS at 250 kilometers. And it actually applies at the full range. They don't have a fall off. They just apply their damage. So long as... Yeah. Like I said, burners cheat. They cheat a lot. This is a pretty big example of that. So I recommend either Demos or Vagabond, as they are the two fastest assault cruisers. And the assault cruisers have a bonus, or a roll bonus, that makes it so the micro warp drives don't hurt your signature as bad. So you can actually signature tank them with a micro warp drive and close the gap. The Demos is significantly safer. You can you carry a second repair, which you can use in emergencies. And the Vagabond is 2 minutes or a minute and a half faster on average, because it goes 1,000 meters a second. Now, these things are 150 kilometers away from you, so you have to fly quite a ways. And basically, I don't know if you've ever heard of the mechanic, but you have to spiral in on each Talos and kill them individually. Okay, so basically, you want to get closer to the NPC while keeping your transversal high. So if you make a line to the NPC and yourself, and then make a right angle, so a right angle from you and the NPC, and then right in the middle, you want to double click in space, right in the middle of that 90-degree angle. And this will put you at a like roughly 45-degree angle approach. And then every now and then, you want to re-aim at the 45. So you want to make that right angle again and re-aim it. And it'll kind of create this effect. We call it spiraling in, because it makes a spiral as you go in. That makes sense. That's the best way I can explain it. Yes. If you tell your ship to... So when you're killing this first Talos, you have the other two Taloses shooting at you. You have to take into account the location of yourself with the first Talos and the other two Taloses to keep your transversal up with the two that are far away, so that they don't kill you, because they together they do 2,000 DPS. Good luck tanking that if you don't get your transversal up.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to grow a little bit of spatial awareness, and you can't just orbit, because if you orbit, you'll directly approach one of the Taloses and it'll wipe you off.
So, so my question then becomes, so okay, so you're not done. Sorry, you're not done with the explanation.
Yeah, well, you just basically go through, keep your transversal up with these Taloses, and kill them all. That's it for that.
Okay. Now, so do you want to cover the other two, or?
Yeah, we'll cover them. So I don't run these as often. The Blood Raiders base is in Ashimu with 2 Sentinels that track and disrupt you. So I used to bring in a passive tank Tila because the newts were too much, and that worked out really well. I tried an Orthrust a few times, and the Orthrust was extremely risky, and it died when you made mistakes. So I found the Gila to be super successful with this. The problem with the Gila is that it likes to eat your drones. So we've switched to a Drekavek, because the Drekavek has really good ranges, and it can kill the frigates, and it can carry the webs, and it can boost the webs to reach 18 kilometers to kill them. So the Drekavik is the way to do this. Basically, you warp into the site, you turn on your tank, you overheat hardeners, you kill the 2 Sentinels, and then you kill the Ashimu. It's really simple to do. This one pays all right. It doesn't have as much bounty because the bounty on Burner Ashimu isn't that high, It doesn't really make as much bounty. Like the Taluses have 7 million each, and the Angel base has 5 million on each of the the Dremules. So you end up making 21 and 22 million respectively on those two bases, where this one only has 13 million bounty. So I don't run it as often, but to make 250 million ISK an hour, it is one of the ones that I run to kind of keep more burners in the list, because it is more profitable than some of the regular level 4s. When I don't have a Glamrex, I run this one.
So let's talk about that. So, or is there one more to go over, or?
Yeah,
Okay, so let's just go over that one. Yeah.
There's one more burner. This is the one that I don't recommend you do. It takes too long to do. It's pretty dangerous, and the fittings are expensive. We learned that a Dracovic, or not a Dracovic, the Vedmik and the Phantasm. This was before the Ikatsira came out. I haven't really played with the Ikatsira in it yet. I don't see it being probable. We could probably get the mission time down to about 12 minutes with the Ikatsira. But we found that the Phantasm works really well for it. It is the super carrier mission. So you land on grid, and there is it's not a Wyvern, it's the Grista super carrier that's on grid with you. It's going to throw 3 flights of fighters at you. Or no, 6 flights of fighters, so 3 of each. So you fight 3 fighters and 3 bombers, and 3 fighters and 3 bombers, and 3 fighters and 3 bombers, and 3 fighters and 3 bombers. The manual piloting required to do this is extensive. I'm not going to get into too much detail. It'd take me too long to describe how to do this over chat. But you have to do a lot of manual piloting to fight these properly. The fighters are extremely fast and hard to keep your transversal up to kill, and they do a lot of damage, so you have to kill one very quickly. And then the bombers, if you stop moving at all, will insta kill you, and you have to fight 3 waves of each. So it takes a long time to do. So I don't do it to farm, but it is pretty cool to show off. It's a very fun fight to learn and do. And once you kill all these, the super carrier works off.
Okay, so let's actually talk about. So we've gone over them. Let's talk about how we get them, because this does seem to be a really important aspect. I know the Glamorex booster helps with standings, because I believe the way to farm them is to decline missions until you get them. So, what are the chances of getting each? Or I shouldn't ask that question. So how do you attain these? I should say, and how do you attain them in a consistent pattern? Because I assume you can get any of the 13 whenever you have the chance to get an Anomic.
Do you remember how earlier I said there's a pool of about 30 level 4 missions you can get from an agent?
Yeah.
Well, it's those 30 missions plus the 13 burners. So there's actually like 40, 50 missions that you can get. And you decline a mission. You check what mission you get next. You request another. You decline your request. You decline your request. You decline your. You sit here and do this until you get a burner. You'll get a burner between 1 in 6 and 1 in 8 requests.
But continuing to decline does reduce your standings with the agent and the factions.
Standings. So this tie, we're going to tie back to things that we talked about earlier. There's a lot of tiebacks here. Do you remember how when I said an agent will continue to talk to you until your standings are down to -2?
Yes.
From a standing of +2 to -2 with connections trained to, or was it connections, or with diplomacy trained to 5, you can decline a good 25 to 30 missions before you are required to take one to keep your standings above -2. So if we do the burners that we want to farm, so everything but, we'll say everything but the Grista base, because the Grista base is the one that's really not worth doing, and we do the rest of the agents and the teams and the other 3 bases, we only have to do roughly 3 or 4 regular level 4 missions while continuing to do burners. If we take out the burner Blood Raider, which is the least lucrative of the burners, we have to do like 4 or 5. If we take out another one, it's because we can't do it, we don't have the skills or whatever, you're gonna have to do 5 to 6 missions. So for every burner mission you take out, you're gonna have to accept another level 4 mission. And basically what you do is you generate yourself. For everybody it's different, because different burners have different effect on standings and all that, so you kind of have to play with it yourself. I do have a really good tool for this, which I've shown Lichgrave already. I don't think he kind of understood the whole context of this tool. It's a pretty cool tool. But
Is that the Google Doc sheet or the
Yeah,
Excel
that
sheet?
Google Doc sheet. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it.
Uh,
That is in the show notes.
yeah. So basically, this list of missions is sorted in the ones that are the most valuable to take and go do. So if you find that your standings are dropping too fast, too frequently, and you're always having to take a mission you don't want to do, you go down on the list. If you're finding that your standings is floating around like 3 or 4 or higher than you'd like, then you take the bottom one off and you play with it for a while. And then if that's still working, you take another bottom one off and you take another bottom one off until you find that you're balancing your standings around 0 with your agent. And then every 16 of these you do, you'll get a storyline mission. And these storyline missions increase your faction standings, because declining missions also decreases your faction standing slowly, but it does. You have to take about 1 in 3 of these faction missions. I find that if I do materials for war and shipyard theft roughly half the time that I get shipyard theft, I get enough standings to keep my faction standings above 5.
So it isn't
Again,
just sunshine and rainbows. I'm gonna run burners, today. I'm gonna have a great time. It's like, okay, now I'm just gonna go burners tomorrow, burners the day after, burners for the rest of time. There is a bit of an upkeep that has to be maintained with the factions that you're going for.
it's very easy to integrate that upkeep into your farming cycle. Like you randomly get missions from this pool, and you have a list of missions that you accept and you ignore the rest. So when you get this mission, you take it. So say you're declining missions, you're not getting the burner you want. Suddenly I get pirate invasion. I go run pirate invasion to keep my standings up because I know that I'm going to need to do it eventually. So you just run it then and there. So it's integrated into the thing. It's an entirely, the way I do it with accepting and declining missions keeps your standings up, and this allows you to continuously run. It is sunshine and rainbows. You can literally run this all day.
Okay, so that's actually really interesting. So let's talk about the Glamourix boosters, because this is something that, while they're going to run out soon, TM, this is something I did want to touch on because this is important. So how do the Glamourix boosters affect that cycle time of you getting the mission and going to do it and declining and declining and declining and getting the burner?
I have a very short and easy answer for you. I have a character that has never sat in a battleship and done a regular level 4 and has probably earned 30 to 40 billion stone burners. He's never done a regular level 4.
And I understand that it's not even the 75. It's just the Glamourix 50 is enough to do this.
Yes. So how the Glamourix boosters work and affect standings is they add to your social skill. A Glamourix 50 is the equivalent. So if you didn't have your social skill trained at all, a Glamourix 50 is the equivalent of training your social skill to 10. So if you take a Glamourix 50, that is the effect of having your social skill trained twice, which is not possible. So you effectively get a Glamourix or a social skill trained to 15 by taking the Glamourix booster 50, which gives you crazy stuff. If you have social train to 5 and you only take a 75, declining a mission actually will gain you standings. It's 0.001 gain, but you can decline missions forever and pick whatever mission you want and only run that mission.
Okay.
So they
That's
completely break missions, and I've hated them since their conception, but I use them and I found that the 75s were a waste because they just do more than you ever need, and the 50s was overkill. My standings with my agents are 5. I haven't seen them drop below 3 since I started using Glamourix boosters. They completely break the mission system and make farming LP way too easy. You do not need to do regular level 4 missions if you're using a Glamourix booster. You can just do burners all day long. Only burners.
wow. Okay. I mean, that's kind of crazy.
I mean,
So
like it got to the point where I started taking out burners because those burners were less effective. I found that I cut the burner list down so much that I started adding the less effective ones back because I was spending too long in station declining missions trying to get the burner I wanted.
wow. So is there anything else that we need to cover with burner missions? Level 4 burners?
Not really. That pretty much sums it up. I mean, I haven't made a unified guide yet, and I really need to. And
Okay. Well, consider
come
this
out.
the basis for it. So,
Okay.
which is nice. So let's move on to something that I think a lot of people will kind of turn their heads at which is, let's talk about level 5 missions. This is something
Okay.
that I have no understanding of. I have complete lack of knowledge in this. So let's talk about setup here. It's obvious that we need to get enough standing to even get access to these agents, but what's the setup here?
So level 5s are much like burners in that you're selective about the missions. So you need to get your faction standings up. It's not 5 for them, it's 7. So you need to get your faction standing for whatever faction you want to run them to 7. Also, running these will tank your is guaranteed. There's no way around it. Will tank your standing against that opposing faction. So if you run Mimitar, you're going to tank your Amar standing. If you run Galente, you're going to tank your Caldari standing. There's no way around it. You have to tank your standing. That's one. That's the shitty part. The cool part, excuse me, the cool part is that once you're set up, it is an ISK printing machine that is arguably pretty boring to do. I find the content boring. Um, there's a few ways to run these. You're going to need a setup in each system or be willing to gate through low sec with your setup. I currently run carriers, so I have a carrier in each system that so if I talk to my agent and I get a mission and it's in a system and that system has a station, I put a carrier in that system, and then I get something fast. In this case, a Dremel because it can survive a smart bomb and it's the fastest frigate in the game. I have a Dremel, and so I pull the mission that I want. Any non-gated mission, I do. I pull the mission. I go to the system where the mission is, dock up, hop in the carrier, undock, descan. If nothing's on descan, uh, then I just warp to the mission. If something's on descan, I decide whether or not I'm willing to risk my carrier. Nowadays, with the Sino changes, this is a lot easier. But I'll do this with people in local. I've done this with Titans on descan. I've done this with things on scan, and it's relatively safe to do because your carrier is only vulnerable in that 15-20 seconds that it's aligning off the station, and the 15-20 seconds where after it lands on grid with the mission and is aligning back. If anything lands on you, you immediately warp back to the station and you abort the mission. When the Glamour X boosters expire, this is going to be a little harder to maintain standings when you do that, but I digress. Basically, you take a mission and you run it. If you do this calmly on one account without a puller, you can easily pull for 500 million ISK an hour
Wow.
with a pretty terrible setup. I'm truly honest. Like my level 5 mission experience isn't that great. The alternative is that you can get a couple buddies. If you get a couple of ships with a couple logi, you can easily run the gated missions as well. They have a lot of cap pressure inside, which makes bringing sub caps difficult. But if you get together with a small group, they're pretty easy to run with some fairly cheap setups. Anything you fly doing these, since you're forced to be in low sec, you cannot be in high sec, uh, is overhead and should be written off as loss as soon as you undock because things will come kill you. Um, but the total carrier cost after insurance is like 800 million ISK. When you're making 400 million ISK an hour, that's definitely an easily affordable overhead. The other way to do it is a Raven, Navy Raven, or Broadcast. Basically, you land on grid, you micro jump drive away, and you use a sensor booster and missile scripts to have a range of like 200 plus kilometers, and you blitz the missions that way. I think it's more expensive to do it that way than carriers, as a Barkess is a billion ISK right now, and losing a Barkess would suck compared to losing a carrier. So that's just kind of the gist of it. You basically warp in, run the mission, kind of make your way back to the station, and you'll make like 400 million ISK an hour.
You hear it
But
here first, folks. The Bargist is harder to lose than a carrier. I'm just saying. The carrier
yeah,
is a safer alternative. All right. Anyway.
yeah.
Wow. So that's
That and tackling a carrier takes a little bit of effort, and after you get hit once by somebody, they should never hit you again because if they're in local, you don't run the mission. Like it's that simple. A person should
wow.
only be able to kill you once.
So I assume the missions in and of themselves have their own ways of being set up.
You warp in at 100 and kill it with a carrier. Carriers have a crap ton of DPS and enough buffer that you can just wipe the mission before they kill you.
And you can run
It's the just
these over and over and over again because I believe these are like standard missions,
to a
right?
degree. So I find that the mission list that I accept for level 5s, I can run it for like 3 or 4 hours, and then I have to have a downtime with my runner where he declines a mission, waits 4 hours, and requests another one because his standings are too low to take the standings hit for declining a mission. So occasionally you get stuck in this point where you're just kind of log in and see if you get a mission. And you don't get a mission, you just kind of log off. But the income is so high that even if you do this like 4 or 5 missions a week, you can pay for your 2 or 3 accounts and fund PvP. Like it's a very lucrative income.
And I think that is something that should be mentioned. We're mentioning all these different ways of doing things, but understand that, guys, that you have 3 characters, and Omega creates 3 characters, so you could have effectively a single character who runs level 4 burners for any given faction, and then you can have 2 guys who do the carrier level 5s for 2 separate factions.
Oh, I want to mention alts. If you bring in like 3 or 2 alts that have a faction standing to 7, you can put them in a frigate and you train their social skills, and suddenly you're making a billion to 1.5 billion an hour with that carrier set.
Yeah, so I mean, there's something to be said. Like even on one account, where you can only be active on one character at a time, you can still be like, okay, I'm gonna log in, gonna see what the level 5 is. I'm not too happy about that. Check the other one. Not too happy about that one either. Guess I'll do burners. You know?
You want your pullers on other accounts.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
The skills to fly a carrier are pretty extensive.
So let's actually.
So
I've
having
heard this
multiple
before.
carrier pilots is kind of cool. So if each of your pullers can fly the carriers, you can share the carriers between the pilots. But I mean, it's hard to have a bunch of carrier pilots. Not many people can do that. I mean, a lot of nullsec people can, but I only have one carrier pilot, so I am forced to use pullers. But yeah, I did. If all your characters can fly carriers, yeah, that's totally doable.
Yeah, I mean that's just one of those things. So is that it with level 5 missions?
Yeah, that's really all I have to say on them. They're
Okay.
really easy to do. It gets mundane, and I get bored of it. I'd rather do level 4s for the less I can actually have
2-hour time frame, guys, but what I like to do starting with these episodes is open up the questions to you guys. Really a half hour full of Q&A. So if things start to slow down enough, Hateless, you were actually going to go run missions, burners after this. I'm not entirely sure what you were going to do.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about running some missions on stream after this. And
If you want to stream afterwards, I mean, we'll host you, and you guys can then see a practical example as to what we were just talking about for the past couple hours. But I am going to open it up.
So I'm just gonna give a quick breakdown of numbers because you're mad ISK. So
Right. Yeah.
running level 4s starting, you can expect about 30 to 50 million ISK an hour. Once you get the level 4s down and you're doing them effectively without the burners, you can expect between 50 to 60, maybe 70 million ISK an hour. Once you learn how to blitz and you get your faction standings up, you can expect 100 plus million ISK an hour. And as you add burners, that's only going to go up. You'll cap out a little over or around 250 million ISK an hour. But 200 million ISK an hour at a super calm pace is super doable and super chill and super relaxed. And that's the high sec ISK. I mean, I don't think it gets much better than that. And then you can also multi-box this if you please.
Is exponential. I mean, with every one you do basically
It's
double.
scalable.
Right?
So one downside, I did want to talk about this about Q&A. So if you multi-box these, you can't do everything perfectly. Your character is going to sit on a gate. Your character is going to sit in station waiting to talk to the agent because you're busy on another character. Your character is going to sit on a gate or on an acceleration gate or something. You're not going to be 100% efficient. And I found that the peak of this is 3 characters. So on one character, I can do 250 mil plus an hour, which is mental. It's truly mental. On 2 characters, I can do about 220 to 230 million ISK an hour. On 3 characters, I do about 200. If that pattern of decline continues and I add a 4th character, I can expect 150 to 170 million ISK an hour on each of the 4 characters because of the amount of attention I'm able to give each screen, which happens to be the same as 200 million ISK an hour on 3 characters. So it definitely caps out at a certain point where you're really just not going to make more ISK by having more characters.
But this is a mechanical thing. So if you decide to become a StarCraft pro, come back, maybe drink a couple Red Bulls and get a few extra monitors, there is a feasibility in running more than 3.
You really have to watch burners and you really have
Right.
to pay attention to what you're doing. A single mistake will cost you your ship, whereas other activities you can kind of leave it alone for a minute, and when you do make a mistake, it's not going to get you killed.
I assume that there is though a practice in that though in
Yes.
multi-boxing, and if somebody does feel comfortable enough
If
and
somebody
feels.
wants to outdo me in doing that and do 4 or 5 accounts doing it, I
You hear
want to
that?
see
That's a
it.
challenge right there,
I
guys. I'm
want to
just
see
saying.
it.
I'm just saying. There's a challenge with you StarCraft pros. I know who you are. All right. I'm just saying. So that's interesting. So this is the big thing. This is kind of like the big tie-in when it comes to all this. Is how does this play into the greater economy that is EVE Online? How does this play into the ecosystem? And it's pretty missions are pretty obvious, which is why I kind of wanted to choose this as the first episode. Missions play in relatively easily because it's loyalty points. A lot of it is loyalty points. Yes, there's a little bit of ISK, but there's a lot of loyalty points and loyalty. So that Nestor you're flying, maybe that's Hateless's Nestor.
I didn't build the Nestor.
Yeah, you didn't build the Nestor, but that could have been his blueprint. You know.
I guess I've never produced a Nestor that produces a Nestor. I build probes and probe accessories.
But you've sold the blueprints, right?
No.
No?
I've never done blueprints. They're not worth it compared to probes. Probes make more pro.
That's fair. But that's the point, right? Is that it could be. You don't know. It could be my Nestor. It could be somebody else's Nestor. So this is one of those things where
it came from mission running.
It came from mission running. Yeah. Absolutely. It could be anybody's. And so when you're sitting there in your fleet of Nestors about to go in and do, I don't know, you can go into like invasions or you're gonna go do C5s in a wormhole, or you're going roaming in your boys with a Stratios, or you're deciding to go explore out wormhole or null second in Estero. Understand that ship that you're flying, a mission runner like Hateless, not exactly Hateless, but like Hateless, went out there, went into these burners, grinded through all that. Or did regular level 4s. But these guys go out there and they mission run to make this LP to turn in, and that thing that they turned in for, you're flying right now. That's something crazy to really think about.
So we were talking on stations earlier today about ISK sinks and ISK faucets, and I believe that missions are both, believe it or not. So as you do missions, you make ISK. You make ISK from mission turn-ins, and you make ISK from killing rats. But all that ISK that you make, you can either keep it as liquid ISK or you can turn it in at the LP store. It costs a lot of ISK to turn in your LP. So when I say something is worth 1,300 ISK per LP, that means that's how much profit I get per LP for what I put down. So all the ISK that I make doing the missions goes into LP, but I get it back when I sell goods. So I may make
that is a net positive, but that's not a direct positive, because you're using all the ISK that you generated into the game turned into the LP, which exits the game.
Yeah, so basically it's not quite an ISK sink, but it's not quite it's not quite
it's
a
balanced.
faucet either.
It's balanced.
Yeah, it's very well balanced, and it produces goods for New Eden, regardless of where you're running missions.
It's net neutral.
Yeah, but what it does is it produces goods that get
Yeah.
blown up, that create content, and
And
that's what's important.
yeah, absolutely. That, and it's not just the SOE ships, guys. It's that Thucker large cap shield extender that you're putting on. That those Caldari
You know, all
Navy,
that Republic fleet ammo that you guys love so
yeah,
much.
those
Yeah,
Caldari
level
Navy
5 mission runners
missiles.
make that.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
Caldari Navy missiles. Those, the probe launchers that people lose all the time. The probes, as Hateless mentioned. So all these faction items that you guys are running around with, and you can go even further than that. All these, all these. I suppose the pirate ships are a bit of a different story, but even then, I think there are pirate missions that you can run. There are pirate burners. I don't know if you can exchange those for ships, but
yeah, almost every single pirate ship that you guys have came out of level 4 missions in nullsec.
along with faction drops, but mostly nullsec.
Well, most of it comes out of there.
So, all those faction ships that you guys see, all those nightmares and vindicators that the incursion runners use, well, there you go, mission runners. So this is a really big part of the EVE ecosystem because faction is such a huge part of the game, especially now with alpha clones, because alphas just eat up faction items. So that the next time you guys are flying a Nestor or shooting Caldari Navy, anything, sit there and think for a second that somebody undocked in a ship, went out there, grinded for a couple hours to bring that LP in, and now his work is sitting there in front of your face, and you're using it to go blow up some dude in Detroit, or using it to go farm some Abyss or something like that. This is really how it all just kind of flows in. Is really neat.
Yeah, it definitely helps the economy in a lot of ways, and it has a big impact.
That's and yeah, in chat, that's a really good example. The VNIs that everybody uses in nullsec, but even on a more PvP level, all the Fed Navy comets, all the
Most of those come out of faction warfare, but
do
that's
those.
still missions.
That's
That still
still
falls into missions. Faction warfare makes
faction
a
warfare
lot
does
of
have
load.
missions, don't they? So
Faction warfare is missions, and I don't do faction warfare. I haven't really played with it. I should, but it is very similar to missions. As you go turn in the mission, you get LP, and the LP is what makes you the ISK, and it's a huge ISK thing.
yeah, but that is something to take into account. So the next time you guys are flying any faction or using anything faction, just remember somebody went out there and grinded up these missions so that you could have that, either through selling the blueprints or making it themselves. All right, that's not bad. So I'm going to open it up to Q&A now, so you guys can ask your questions in chat, and we'll answer to the best of our abilities. In the meantime, Hateless, if you want to get set up with your stream or want to get geared up on your end.
Yeah, so I've got missions lined up. I'm gonna do the bare bones. I don't have my main mission runners in the station. I have one of them, and he does the effective burners. That's all he does. You remember I told you I have a character that has never flown a battleship or anything and only done burners. Well, I'm going to show you guys that.
Yeah, and that's actually going to be really interesting. And this is really cool because you guys who just listened to us speak for almost 2 hours can then go turn around and you can see somebody go do this right in front of your face. So not only do you get the auditory learning, but you also get the visuals as well. And you get to see kind of what he was talking about, because a lot of this, while it is cool to listen to, there is some things that can only be explained through being, like you were explaining the spiraling maneuvers, like that's a lot easier to show, especially
doesn't run that mission, unfortunately. I feel so
but that's okay. But that's the example that I was just going to give, is that's something that's very difficult to comprehend on a theoretical standpoint. So when seeing it, it's really cool. Oh, that was I don't even know what that is. I got some ping from OBS. So thank you, whoever that was.
So do you want to open this up to Q&A in your stream, or do you want to move the Q&A over to mine while I run the missions? I can Q&A while running missions, or we can sit here and Q&A.
I mean, if you're set up, we can continue to answer questions while we get up if an.
Okay, I'm setting up the stream now, and it's just gonna take me a minute.
One of the things that I do want to talk about. So thanks for coming out. It's been fun. We had a lot of trouble in the early minutes, but we powered on through it and we got set up. So thank you all for sticking around and being cool. You guys can catch this podcast here on Talking in Stations at my YouTube channel, which is which is Lichgrave. You just type that into the search bar and you'll find it. The link for that will be in the show notes. You guys will also be able to catch this over on SoundCloud, hopefully. That still needs a little bit of setup, but when that's done, you guys will be able to catch it over on SoundCloud. Again, all the information that we talked about will be on the show notes, which I will link again. You guys can also catch me over at, again, youtube.com, Lichgrave. You guys can catch me at twitch.tv/Lichgrave and on Twitter at Lichgrave1. Hateless, what are you up to? Where are you at?
I am ready to go live.
Okay.
I'm just waiting you to let me know I should.
What are you gonna be up to? What are you gonna be getting up to in the next few weeks? And where can people catch what you do?
So I stream from roughly, this is the right now, like this exact moment is normally the time that I'm starting to go live. I've been recently getting into soloing invasions with 3 Marauders and Slipnir. I've been kind of expanding myself from just missions and kind of learning other things, which has been fun. But I still do occasionally run missions. But I stream from about this time to 2 p.m. Or coming up to 2 p.m., like 1:30, 1:45 p.m. PST. And then sometimes I stream in the afternoon, and then I almost always stream on weekends, starting again at this is my starting hour, so about 11:45, 12 o'clock.
Cool. And where can people get a hold of you if they want to, see some of your content or catch up with you?
All my guys can be found on YouTube. I also have a Discord which you can reach me on, and I hang out with Melro and Astrothi's group a lot, so you can find me there.
So YouTube Hateless_gaming.
Yes, I believe if you search Hateless, my YouTube comes up.
Okay, and then it's Twitter at Hateless_gaming. I think that's correct.
Or sorry, you search Hateless Game.
Yeah, and then Twitter at Hateless_gaming.
Yes.
So you guys can go Hateless_gaming, and if you're set to go, we will host.
Yeah, I'm hitting go live. And after we go live, I'm gonna go ahead and, or actually, I'll stay in the chat with you for a little while.
Yeah.
We can get this Q&A live. Are you gonna record the Q&A for the podcast? Oh, okay.
Quickly.
So I just went live.
Yeah, let me. All right. Oh, and guys, I think this is also important. Real quick, while we're getting up with the raid, Hateless does do community work, continuing charities. So please, by all means, give him some love, give him some help over there because he's doing great things.
Right now, I'm raising money to help with Eve Vegas. I'm kind of on the really broke side and can't really afford to go, but we're going anyways. So any help is greatly appreciated.
All right.
That's where I'm at. But yeah, we successfully did a Autism Speaks charity. We raised $2,000 sponsoring to go on a walk, and I'm going on the walk on Sunday. And then I frequently do JDRF.
Cool. Well, so helping out the Eve community with these, helping out the new players with the cast, and then helping out the community, which is an amazing thing. Thank you, Hateless, for being on. Everybody, thank you so much
Of
for
course.
watching. Let's go raid Hateless, guys. Thank you so much
I'm gonna
again.
leave you guys with fly fun and enjoy your time in Eve Online. Beyond all, doesn't
Yep.
matter how much ISK you make. If you're making fun, you're making worse than the guy sitting in station because he's afraid to undock.
Yep. As always, guys, stay awesome.